There are moments in life when silence becomes your greatest weapon, and I learned this at 63, standing in a funeral parlor wearing my best black dress while my son and his wife whispered about my future as if I were already dead. My name is Jacqueline Thornfield, and I've been a widow for exactly 14 days. 14 days since Walter drew his last labored breath in that sterile hospital room. 14 days since I held his cold hand and promised him I'd be strong. What I didn't promise, what I couldn't have imagined I'd need to promise, was that I'd protect myself from our own son. The morning of Walter's funeral, I stood in front of my bedroom mirror fastening the pearl necklace he'd given me for our 20th anniversary. My reflection showed a woman who'd weathered 6 decades with dignity intact, silver hair pulled back in a neat chignon, brown eyes that still held fire despite the recent tears. I'd lost weight during Walter's illness, but I carried myself straight, shoulders back, a habit from my teaching days when commanding respect meant everything. The house felt different without Walter's presence. 40 years we'd lived here in Cedar Falls, Iowa, watching the neighborhood change, the young families move in where elderly couples used to wave from their porches. Our colonial-style home with its blue shutters and wraparound porch had been Walter's pride. He'd spent every weekend for 20 years perfecting the garden, building the deck, refinishing the hardwood floors we'd walked across for decades of marriage. I made coffee in Walter's favorite mug out of habit, then poured it out when I realized what I'd done. The silence pressed against me like a physical weight. We'd had our routines, Walter and I, morning coffee, evening news, weekend drives to visit his sister in Des Moines. Simple pleasures that make up a life well lived. The doorbell rang at 9:30 sharp. I knew it would be Sean, my 41-year-old son, and his wife Megan. They'd been attentive during Walter's final weeks, visiting the hospital, helping with arrangements. I'd been grateful then, mistaking their efficiency for compassion. Sean stood on my doorstep in his charcoal suit, looking every inch the successful insurance adjuster he'd become. He had Walter's strong jaw but my brown eyes, though his held none of the warmth I remembered from his childhood. Megan stood beside him in a black dress that probably cost more than I used to spend on groceries in a month. She was pretty in that polished way some women achieve in their 30s, blonde highlights, perfect makeup, manicured nails that never saw real work. "Mom," Sean said, stepping forward to embrace me. "How are you holding up?" "I'm managing," I replied, breathing in his cologne. When had my little boy started wearing cologne that cost more than Walter's aftershave? Megan kissed my cheek, leaving a faint trace of lipstick. "Jacqueline, you look tired. Are you sleeping?" "As well as can be expected." We drove to the funeral home in Sean's BMW, me in the back seat like a passenger in my own life. I watched the familiar streets of Cedar Falls pass by, the diner where Walter and I had our first date, the park where Sean learned to ride his bicycle, the library where I'd worked for 15 years before Walter's business took off. The service was small but dignified. Walter had outlived most of his contemporaries, and Sean had limited the arrangements to immediate family and a few neighbors. Reverend Collins spoke beautifully about Walter's dedication to his family and community, about the small construction company he'd built from nothing into something that supported us comfortably for 30 years. What Reverend Collins didn't know, what Sean and Megan didn't know, was that Walter had been far more successful than any of us had realized. I discovered this 3 days after the funeral when Walter's lawyer, Roger Morrison, called to schedule a meeting. Roger had handled Walter's business affairs for 20 years, but Walter had always managed our personal finances himself. "Private meeting," Roger had specified on the phone. "Just you, Jacqueline." Walter's instructions were very clear about that. The meeting was scheduled for the following Tuesday, but Walter's secrets were already burning in my chest like swallowed fire. The evening after the funeral, Sean and Megan stayed for dinner. I'd made Walter's favorite pot roast, needing the familiar motions of cooking to keep my hands busy and my mind occupied. We sat at the dining room table where Sean had done his homework as a boy, where Walter and I had shared thousands of meals, where I'd served Christmas dinner to our small family every year since Sean was born. Mom, Sean began, cutting his meat with precise movements, Megan and I have been talking. I set down my fork. Something in his tone made my stomach tighten. We're worried about you, Megan added, her voice carrying that particular brand of concern that sounds rehearsed. Living alone in this big house, managing everything by yourself. I've been managing just fine for 63 years, I said evenly. Sean exchanged a look with his wife. Dad handled all the finances, all the paperwork, the house, the utilities, the insurance. It's a lot for anyone to manage alone. Your father taught me well. But you don't need to struggle through it alone, Megan continued. We've been researching some wonderful assisted living communities. Very nice places, Mom. Gardens, activities, medical staff on site 24 hours a day. The words hit me like cold water. Assisted living. Just to look, Mom. Just to see what's available. Sean leaned forward, his expression earnest in that way that reminded me of when he was 12 and trying to explain why he'd broken my favorite vase. There's this place called Sunset Manor, about 20 minutes from our house. We could visit every week, take you out for dinner, shopping. I studied their faces across the table, Sean with his earnest concern, Megan with her practiced sympathy. Neither of them had asked what I wanted. Neither had suggested I might want to stay in the home Walter and I had built together. I'm not ready to give up my independence, I said carefully. Of course not, Megan rushed to assure me, but think about it. No more worrying about maintenance, no more cooking if you don't want to, no more being alone all the time. And if something happened, if you fell or had a medical emergency, nothing's going to happen to me. Mom, you're not getting any younger. Sean's voice carried a note of impatience I recognized from his teenage years. Dad's gone, and we're your family now. We just want what's best for you. After they left, I sat in Walter's recliner, surrounded by 40 years of memories, the family photos on the mantel, the books we'd collected, the throw pillows I'd needlepoint during long winter evenings. This was my life, my history, my home. But it was also something else, something Sean and Megan didn't know. It was my sanctuary, my fortress, my launching pad. I went to Walter's desk and pulled out the folder Roger Morrison had asked me to bring to our meeting. Inside were documents Walter had left for me, documents that would change everything. As I read through Walter's careful handwriting, his final letter to me, I began to understand that my husband had been preparing for this moment long before his illness. He'd seen something in Sean and Megan that I'd been too loving, too hopeful to recognize. The letter was dated 6 months before his diagnosis. My dearest Jacqueline. If you're reading this, then I'm gone and you're alone with decisions I pray you'll never have to make. But knowing our son as I've come to know him these past few years, I suspect you will. Sean is not the boy we raised. I don't know when he changed, or if he was always this way and we were too blind to see it. But he sees you as a burden now, and he sees your inheritance as his right. Megan has encouraged this, and together they will try to convince you that you're helpless, that you need their management. You are not helpless. You never have been. The enclosed documents will show you exactly how much your life is worth, to them and to you. Use this knowledge wisely. Use it to protect yourself and to teach them what family really means. I love you, Jacqueline. I trust you to do what's right. Forever yours. Walter. My hands trembled as I set the letter aside and looked at the next document, a summary of accounts and assets that took my breath away. Walter's construction company hadn't just supported us, it had made us wealthy. The house was paid off and worth $400,000. Walter had left me 2 cars, his practical Honda and a 1967 Mustang convertible he'd restored in secret, worth $60,000. But it was the bank account that made me grip the arm of his chair. $800,000 in an account with only my name on it. Sean and Megan didn't know any of this. They assumed we lived on Walter's modest pension and Social Security, that the house carried a mortgage, that I had perhaps $50,000 to my name, enough to make me worth managing, not enough to make me independent. They were wrong on both counts. I folded Walter's letter carefully and locked it back in the desk drawer with the other documents. Tomorrow I would meet with Roger Morrison and learn the full extent of Walter's final gift to me. Tonight I would sit in his chair and plan exactly how I would handle my son's attempt to warehouse my life. Outside, a spring storm was building. Lightning flickered in the distance, and I counted the seconds until thunder rolled across Cedar Falls. Walter had taught me that, how to measure the distance of approaching storms. This one was going to be very close indeed. The phone rang, interrupting my calculations. Sean's voice was warm, solicitous. "Hey Mom, just wanted to check on you before bed. Megan made some calls today about Sunset Manor. They have an opening next month, and they'd love to give us a tour this weekend." I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of Walter's secrets and the sharp clarity of what lay ahead. "That's very thoughtful of you both," I said quietly. "Let me think about it." "Of course, Mom. Take all the time you need. We just want you to be safe and happy." After I hung up, I sat in the growing darkness, listening to the storm approach. Tomorrow I would discover exactly how much my freedom was worth. Tomorrow I would begin to understand the full scope of Walter's gift and the true nature of my son's intentions. But tonight, for the first time since Walter's death, I smiled. The storm was coming, but I was no longer defenseless against it. Roger Morrison's office. Roger Morrison's law office occupied the second floor of a brick building on Main Street, the kind of place that had weathered 40 years of small-town changes while maintaining its dignity. I climbed the narrow stairs Tuesday morning, my purse clutched tightly against my side, Walter's documents secure in a manila envelope. Roger greeted me with the same gentle professionalism he'd shown during Walter's illness. At 55, he still wore the wire-rimmed glasses and conservative ties that had made him seem older when Walter first hired him. His handshake was firm, his eyes kind but serious. "Jacqueline, please sit down. Can I get you coffee?" "No, thank you." I settled into the leather chair across from his desk, the same chair where I'd sat 6 months ago while Walter discussed his will. Then I'd been the supportive wife, letting my husband handle business while I worried about his cough. Walter left very specific instructions about this meeting, Roger began, opening a thick file. "He wanted to make sure you understood your complete financial picture before," he paused, choosing his words carefully, "before you had to make any decisions about your future." He spread the documents across his desk like a hand of cards that would determine my fate: property deeds, bank statements, investment portfolios, insurance policies. A financial landscape I'd never fully explored. "Your husband was a remarkable man, Jacqueline. Not just in his devotion to you, but in his business acumen. He turned a small construction company into a very profitable enterprise, and more importantly, he invested wisely." The numbers Roger showed me were staggering. Walter's construction company had been sold 5 years ago for $1.2 million, money he'd quietly invested in conservative funds and municipal bonds. The house was worth more than I'd imagined. The life insurance policy alone was worth $500,000. In total, Roger said quietly, your liquid assets amount to approximately $1.4 million. The house and personal property bring your total worth to just under $2 million. I stared at the papers, my practical teacher's mind struggling to process the reality. Walter and I had lived comfortably but modestly. We'd driven used cars, clipped coupons, bought generic brands at the grocery store. I'd mended clothes and grown vegetables in our backyard garden. "He wanted you to know," Roger continued, "that he kept your lifestyle modest by choice, not necessity. He believed in security, in having enough to weather any storm. He also believed," Roger hesitated, then pulled out another document. "He believed you might need to protect yourself. It was a letter addressed to Roger, written in Walter's careful handwriting. Roger. By the time Jacqueline reads this, Sean will have begun pressuring her to give up her independence. I've watched my son change over the past few years, influenced by his wife's materialism and his own growing sense of entitlement. They assume Jacqueline is helpless and poor. They are wrong on both counts. Jacqueline has the strength to handle wealth, but she may need help understanding that strength. She spent 40 years as a teacher, managing classrooms, solving problems, making difficult decisions. She raised a son, managed a household, and supported my business dreams when we had nothing but hope. She is not fragile. She is not helpless. And she is not poor. Help her understand this. Help her protect herself. And if Sean challenges her decisions, remind him that family loyalty works both ways. Walter Thornfield. Jacqueline, Roger said gently, Walter asked me to help you with whatever decisions you make, but he was very clear that the decisions are yours alone. I folded my hands in my lap, feeling the weight of Walter's trust and the sharp clarity of my situation. What exactly did Sean tell you when he called yesterday? Roger's eyebrows rose. I'm sorry. Sean called you yesterday afternoon. I could tell from his conversation with Megan when he got home. What did he want? Roger cleared his throat uncomfortably. He expressed concern about your ability to manage your finances alone. He asked about establishing a conservatorship. The word hit me like a slap. A conservatorship. It's a legal arrangement where someone else manages your financial affairs, Roger explained. Sean seemed to think it would be in your best interest, given your recent loss he said your advanced age might make financial decisions difficult. I was 63 years old. I'd been managing budgets and making decisions since before Sean was born. What did you tell him? I told him that would require a court order and clear evidence of mental incapacity. I also told him that any such proceeding would require your consent or a very compelling medical evaluation. Roger leaned forward. Jacqueline, you're nowhere near needing that kind of protection. Your husband knew that. The question is, do you? I left Roger's office with a new understanding of my power and a crystal clear view of my son's intentions. Sean didn't want to help me manage my money, he wanted to manage my money. The assisted living facility wasn't about my safety, it was about his control. The tour. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of crisp Iowa sunshine that makes even difficult conversation seem possible. I dressed carefully for our tour of Sunset Manor, a navy cardigan Walter had complimented, comfortable walking shoes, and the small gold cross necklace my mother had given me. I wanted to look like exactly what Sean and Megan expected, a recently widowed woman in need of guidance. They arrived at 10 o'clock sharp, Sean in pressed khakis and a polo shirt, Megan in a cheerful yellow sundress that somehow managed to make even a nursing home tour seem like a social event. Her smile was bright, her manner encouraging, but I caught the quick assessing glance she gave my outfit. You look lovely, Mom, Sean said, kissing my cheek. Ready for this? As ready as anyone can be to tour their potential future, I replied. The 15-minute drive to Sunset Manor gave me time to observe my son and daughter-in-law and their natural habitat. Megan chattered about the facility's amenities while Sean provided practical commentary about medical care and security. They'd clearly researched this thoroughly, rehearsed their presentation. The monthly fee includes everything, Megan was saying as we pulled into the circular drive. Meals, housekeeping, activities, basic medical care. It's really quite reasonable when you consider what you'd spend maintaining the house. How reasonable? I asked. About $4,000 a month, Sean said. That sounds like a lot, but when you factor in your house payment, utilities, food, maintenance. I don't have a house payment. Silence filled the BMW. I could practically hear Sean's mental gears turning. Well, no, not a mortgage payment, he said carefully, but property taxes, insurance, upkeep, it all adds up. Inside Sunset Manor, we were greeted by a woman named Terry Wells, the marketing director. She was perhaps 50, with carefully styled blonde hair and the kind of professional warmth that comes from years of convincing families to make difficult decisions. "Mrs. Thornfield, I'm so pleased to meet you. Sean and Megan have told me wonderful things about you." I shook her hand, noting the firmness of her grip and the way her eyes assessed me quickly: health, mobility, cognitive function. I'd seen that same evaluating look in parents' eyes when they met me as their child's teacher. "Thank you for accommodating us on such short notice," I said. "Of course. Let me show you around. I think you'll be impressed with what we offer." The tour began in the main lobby, a pleasant space with comfortable seating areas, a reception desk, and large windows overlooking the gardens. Residents moved through the space at the measured pace of people who had nowhere urgent to go. Some used walkers, others moved independently, but all shared the particular careful gait of people conscious of their fragility. "We have 120 residents," Terry explained as we walked. "Independent living, assisted living, and memory care all on one campus. It means you never have to move again, no matter how your needs change." "That's reassuring," I said, watching Sean nod approvingly. We visited the dining room where lunch was being served. The food looked institutional but adequate: baked chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans. The residents ate quietly, some alone, others in small groups. A few needed assistance from staff members who moved efficiently between tables. 3 meals a day, Terry noted, plus snacks available 24 hours. Our dietary staff can accommodate most medical restrictions and preferences. "What about people who like to cook for themselves?" I asked. "Each apartment has a small kitchenette, but honestly, most residents find it's easier to just enjoy the freedom from meal planning." Megan squeezed my arm. "Imagine never having to grocery shop or cook if you don't want to. You could spend your time on things you actually enjoy." We toured the activity rooms, a library with large print books and jigsaw puzzles, an art room where residents painted watercolor flowers, a recreation room where a group was playing bingo with prizes of travel-sized toiletries. "We have a very active social calendar," Terry said. "Exercise classes, guest speakers, day trips to local attractions. There's always something happening." I watched the bingo players for a moment, noting their concentration on the simple game, their excitement over winning small prizes. These were people who had once managed households, raised families, built careers. Now they competed for hand lotion and lip balm. "It looks very organized," I said. "We find structure helps our residents feel secure," Terry replied. The apartment they showed us was on the second floor, just as Megan had mentioned. It was pleasant enough: a small living area, a bedroom with a hospital-style bed, a kitchenette with a microwave and small refrigerator, a bathroom with grab bars and a walk-in shower. "This would be perfect for you, Mom," Sean said, standing in the middle of the main room. "Look at that view of the garden." Through the window, I could see the carefully maintained grounds, flower beds, walking paths, benches placed at regular intervals. It was pretty in the way a postcard is pretty, designed to be pleasing without requiring any effort or involvement. "How much personal furniture can residents bring?" I asked. "That's a great question," Terry said. "We encourage residents to bring personal items that make them feel at home: a favorite chair, family photos, small decorative pieces. But the apartments are furnished with the essentials, so there's no need to move heavy furniture." "What happens to the furniture that doesn't fit?" Another brief pause. Terry glanced at Sean and Megan. "Families usually handle that," she said diplomatically. "Storage, donations, sales, whatever works best." I nodded thoughtfully, picturing 40 years of memories being sorted into piles of keep, donate, and discard. "And what about residents who want to travel?" I asked. "Visit family, take vacations. We're very flexible about short trips, Terry assured me. We just ask for advance notice so we can adjust meal planning and activities. What about longer trips? A month or two? Terry's smile became a bit fixed. We'd have to discuss that on a case-by-case basis. The monthly fee continues regardless, of course, and we'd need to make sure your apartment remained available. So I'd pay $4,000 a month even if I wasn't here. Think of it as maintaining your home base, Megan interjected quickly. You'd have the security of knowing you always had a place to come back to. After the tour, we sat in Terry's office to discuss practical matters. She had prepared a folder with information about costs, services, and admission procedures. The basic monthly fee is $3,800, she explained, but that can vary depending on the level of care needed. If you require assistance with medications, personal care, or have medical needs that require additional attention, there are supplemental charges. What's the maximum monthly cost? I asked. For memory care, it can reach $6,500 per month, but that's for residents who need comprehensive assistance. Sean leaned forward. What kind of financial documentation do you require? We need to verify that potential residents can afford at least 2 years of care in advance, Terry said. Bank statements, investment portfolios, property valuations. We also require a conversation with family members to ensure everyone understands the financial commitment. I watched Sean's face carefully. 2 years in advance, so for the basic level, that would be about $91,000, Terry said smoothly. It sounds like a lot, but we find it protects both the resident and the facility. No one wants to worry about running out of money. Sean cleared his throat. And if someone's resources were limited, are there programs to help with costs? Medicaid can cover some expenses. The confrontation. The phone started ringing Monday morning. I was in Walter's garden, pulling weeds from the flower beds and enjoying the morning sun on my face when I heard Sean's ringtone through the open kitchen window. I let it go to voicemail. He called again. Then again. By the time I came inside to wash my hands, there were 4 missed calls and 2 text messages. The desperation in his electronic persistence made me smile. I poured myself a cup of coffee and listened to his messages. Mom, got your letter. Can you call me back? I think there might be some confusion about the financial situation. Hey, it's me again. Megan and I are free this morning if you want to talk about this stuff in person. Mom, I'm worried you might be getting bad advice from someone. Can you please call me? Okay, I'm coming over. We need to talk. I was still smiling when his BMW pulled into my driveway. Sean got out alone. Megan was apparently at work, managing her own crisis of expectations. He walked up to my front door with the determined stride of a man who'd spent the weekend crafting his arguments. Mom, we need to talk, he said before I could even say hello. Good morning to you too, Sean. Coffee? This is serious, Mom. What's this about international volunteer work? And why are you meeting with Roger Morrison again? I led him into the kitchen, moving at my own pace, making him follow my rhythm instead of his urgency. I thought I explained that in my letter. I'm exploring my options. Mom, be realistic. You're 63 years old. You can't just run off to Africa or wherever you're thinking of going. Why not? The question stopped him cold. He stared at me as if I'd suggested joining the circus. Because it's not safe. Because you don't have the resources for that kind of adventure. Because you have responsibilities here. What responsibilities? Another pause. Sean had clearly expected this conversation to go differently. You have the house to maintain, bills to pay, your health to consider. And frankly, Mom, you have family who care about you and want to make sure you're okay. I poured him coffee and sat down across from him at the kitchen table. Sean, what exactly do you think my financial situation is? Well, I know Dad was careful with money, but construction work doesn't exactly make people wealthy. You have the house, probably some savings, Social Security, maybe a small pension. Probably some savings, I repeated. Mom, I'm not trying to pry into your personal business, but if you're thinking about expensive travel and volunteer work, you need to be realistic about what you can afford. I studied my son's face, seeing the anxiety beneath his impatience. He was genuinely worried, not about my well-being, but about the inheritance he'd been counting on. How much do you think I have, Sean? I don't know. Maybe $50,000. $75,000. Look, it doesn't matter how much you have. What matters is making it last. And you think $4,000 a month at Sunset Manor is the best way to make it last? I think it's the best way to make sure you're safe and taken care of. And if the money runs out, Megan and I would help. We'd never let you become homeless or anything. I set down my coffee cup and looked at my son, really looked at him. When had he become this calculating stranger? When had his love become conditional on my compliance? Sean, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with me. Of course. If I moved to Sunset Manor and ran out of money in 5 years, would you and Megan really take care of me? Would you invite me to live with you, give me a room in your house, support me financially? The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Sean's face went through a series of expressions: surprise, calculation, something that might have been guilt. Mom, that's not. I mean, we'd figure something out. There are programs, other facilities. That's not what I asked. Look, we don't have to worry about that right now. We just need to focus on making good decisions with the resources you have. I stood up and walked to Walter's desk, pulling out the folder Roger Morrison had given me. Sean watched nervously as I returned to the table. I think it's time you understood exactly what resources I have, I said, opening the folder. I spread the financial documents across the table: bank statements, investment summaries, property valuations, insurance policies. Sean's eyes widened as he processed the numbers. This can't be right, he said, picking up a bank statement. This says you have over $1 million in this account alone. Your father was a very successful businessman. He was also a very private man who believed in living below his means. Sean stared at the papers, his face cycling through shock, confusion, and something that looked like betrayal. You're rich. You're actually rich. I'm comfortable. I have enough money to live however I choose for the rest of my life. But you let Megan and me. He stopped, realizing what he was about to say. I let you what, Sean? You let us worry about you. You let us think you needed our help. You offered to help. I never asked for it. But you knew what we were thinking. You knew we were trying to find ways to take care of you. I leaned back in my chair, feeling the weight of this moment. Sean, tell me honestly, if you'd known about this money, would you still have suggested I move to Sunset Manor? Another long pause. That's not the point. It's exactly the point. If you'd known I had nearly $2 million, would you have been so concerned about my safety? Would you have been so eager to help me manage my finances? Sean's face was flushed now, his composure cracking. You're being unfair. We were trying to help you. Help me with what? Help me sell my house so you could manage the proceeds. Help me invest in your business opportunity. Help me make decisions about my own life. You're twisting this around. We were thinking about your future. No, Sean. You were thinking about your future. You were thinking about the inheritance you expected to receive, and you were making plans based on that expectation. He stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. So what? You were testing us. You were playing some kind of game. I was observing. I was learning. I was discovering what kind of people my son and daughter-in-law really are. And what did you discover? I gathered the financial documents and placed them back in the folder. I discovered that you see me as a burden to be managed and an asset to be protected. I discovered that your love comes with conditions and expectations. I discovered that you have no interest in what I want or need, only in what you think is best for me. That's not true. Isn't it? When I mentioned wanting to travel, to volunteer overseas, to have adventures, what was your reaction? Did you ask what would make me happy? Did you offer to help me plan? Did you express any interest in what I might want to do with my life? Sean turned from the window, his face hard. You're 63 years old, Mom. You're not some college kid who can just run off and save the world. Why not? Because you're old. Because you're alone. Because you don't understand how dangerous the world is. I understand exactly how dangerous the world is, Sean. I also understand that the greatest danger in my life right now is giving up my independence to people who don't have my best interests at heart. The words hung in the air between us like a sentence passed. Sean stared at me, his face a mixture of anger and something that might have been fear. So what happens now? He asked quietly. Now you and Megan decide what kind of relationship you want to have with me. A relationship based on honesty and respect for my autonomy, or no relationship at all. You're giving me an ultimatum. I'm giving you a choice. The same choice you gave me when you decided I was too old and incompetent to manage my own life. Sean sat back down, his shoulders sagging. For a moment, he looked like the little boy I'd raised, confused and uncertain. Then his face hardened again. So you're just going to throw away your family? You're going to run off to Africa or wherever and abandon the people who love you? The people who love me would want me to be happy. They would support my dreams, encourage my independence, celebrate my adventures. They wouldn't try to warehouse me in an assisted living facility so they could control my assets. We never said anything about controlling your assets. You offered to manage the sale of my house, set up a trust, invest my money in Sean's business venture. What would you call that? Sean was quiet for a long time, staring at his hands. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. I thought you needed us. I thought we were helping you. You thought I was helpless and poor. You thought you could make decisions for me because I was too old and too stupid to make them myself. That's not what I thought. Then what did you think, Sean? What was your plan? He looked up at me, and for the first time in years, I saw something real in his eyes, not calculation or manipulation, but genuine emotion. I thought you were going to die alone in this house. I thought you were going to get sick or hurt and have no one to help you. I thought you needed me to take care of you. And the money. The inheritance. His face closed off again. I don't know what you want me to say about that. I want you to tell me the truth. Fine. Yes, I thought about the inheritance. Yes, I thought about what would happen to the house, to Dad's things, to whatever money was left after your care. But that doesn't mean I didn't care about you. It means you cared about me as a responsibility, not as a person. It means you made assumptions about what I needed without ever asking what I wanted. Sean stood up again, his composure returning. So what do you want, Mom? What's your plan? I smiled, feeling the weight of Walter's secrets lifting from my shoulders. I want to live. I want to travel. I want to help people who need help. I want to use my remaining years to make a difference in the world. And if something happens to you, if you get sick or hurt in some foreign country, then I'll deal with it the same way I dealt with your father's illness. The same way I've dealt with every challenge in my life. And us? What about Megan and me? That depends on you. If you can accept that I'm an independent woman with my own plans and dreams, then you'll always be welcome in my life. If you can't, I shrugged. Then you'll have to live with the consequences of your choices. Sean walked to the door, then turned back. Mom, I'm sorry if we handled this wrong, but we really were trying to help. I know you were, Sean. That's what makes it so sad. After he left, I sat in the quiet kitchen, surrounded by the evidence of my husband's love and my son's betrayal. The documents spread across the table represented more than financial security. They represented freedom, possibility, the chance to become someone new. I picked up my phone and called Roger Morrison. Roger, it's Jacqueline. I'm ready to start making some changes. What kind of changes? I want to set up a trust for my overseas volunteer work. I want to explore tax implications for extended international travel. And I want to make sure my will clearly reflects my intentions. And Sean, have you talked to him about your plans? I looked out the window at Walter's garden, where spring was painting the world in shades of green and gold. Sean has made his choice, Roger. Now it's time for me to make mine. 6 months later, Ghana. 6 months later, I stood in the red dust of a Ghanaian village, watching the sun set over the construction site where my Habitat for Humanity team had just finished building a home for a family of 7. My hands were dirty, my clothes stained with sweat and paint, my silver hair escaping from under a baseball cap that read Iowa Hawkeyes. I had never felt more alive. The WhatsApp message on my phone buzzed insistently. Sean again. I'd received dozens of messages over the past 6 months, angry, pleading, manipulative, and finally desperately apologetic. I glanced at the screen. Mom, Megan's pregnant. We're going to need your help. Please come home. I turned off the phone and slipped it into my pocket. The irony wasn't lost on me. Now that they had real financial pressures, now that they faced the actual costs of raising a child, suddenly they remembered they had a wealthy mother. Mrs. Jacqueline called Madison, a 10-year-old boy who'd appointed himself my translator and guide. Come see. The family wants to thank you again. I walked over to where the Osei family stood in front of their new home, a simple concrete block structure with a tin roof, 3 rooms, and running water. Akoshua, the mother, took my hands and spoke in rapid Twi while her husband, Emmanuel, translated. She says you are a blessing from God. She says her children will pray for you every day. I looked at the 3 children, ages 4, 7, and 10, who would now have a safe place to sleep, a clean place to study, protection from the rainy season floods that had destroyed their previous home. This was what wealth was for. This was what my inheritance meant. Tell her it's my honor to help, I said, accepting the small carved wooden elephant Akoshua pressed into my hands. That evening, I sat on the veranda of the volunteer guest house, typing on my laptop. The internet connection was spotty, but I managed to send my weekly blog post to the website I'd started, Adventures in Wisdom, One Woman's Journey from Grief to Purpose. The blog had gained a surprising following. Other widows and widowers looking for inspiration, adult children dealing with aging parents, people of all ages questioning their life choices. I'd become an accidental advocate for late-life reinvention. Week 24 in Ghana. Today we completed our 8th house. 8 families now have safe, clean homes where their children can thrive. 8 families have hope where they once had desperation. But I'm not writing to tell you about them. I'm writing to tell you about me. 6 months ago, I was a widow facing the choice between independence and security. My family offered me security, a safe place to live, people to manage my affairs, protection from the uncertainties of life. All I had to give up was my autonomy, my dreams, and my right to choose my own path. I chose differently. I chose uncertainty over security, adventure over safety, purpose over comfort. Some of you have written to ask if I'm angry at my son. The answer is complicated. I'm not angry, Anger is exhausting, and I don't have time for it. I'm disappointed. I'm sad. But I'm not angry. What I am is free. Free to wake up each morning and choose how to spend my day. Free to use my resources to make a difference. Free to discover parts of myself I never knew existed. At 63, I'm stronger than I was at 30. I'm more confident than I was at 40. I'm more purposeful than I was at 50. Age is not a prison sentence. Widowhood is not a death sentence. Family obligation is not a life sentence. You are never too old to start over. You are never too set in your ways to change. You are never too far from shore to chart a new course. Next week, I fly to Kenya to begin a 3-month assignment with Doctors Without Borders. I'll be managing logistics for a mobile clinic that serves remote villages. It's challenging work, but it's work that matters. After that, I'm considering an offer to teach English in Vietnam. At 64, I'll be the oldest volunteer in the program. I can't wait. The security my family offered me was an illusion. The only real security is knowing you can take care of yourself, that you have the resources and the courage to face whatever comes. I have both now, the financial resources my husband left me, and the courage I found in myself. To those of you facing similar choices, trust yourself. Trust your instincts. Trust your right to live your life on your own terms. The people who truly love you will support your choices, even if they don't understand them. The people who don't, well, their opinion doesn't matter as much as you think it does. From Ghana, with love and hope. Jacqueline. I posted the blog entry and closed my laptop. My phone buzzed with another message from Sean, but I ignored it. Tomorrow I would fly to Accra, then to Nairobi, then to a small village in northern Kenya where people needed medical care more than they needed my family drama. The stars over Ghana were spectacular, unpolluted by city lights. I sat in the darkness, thinking about Walter, about the gift he'd given me, about the life I'd built from the ashes of his death. Walter had known, somehow. He'd seen what I couldn't see, that Sean and Megan would try to control me, would try to make me into a burden to be managed rather than a person to be loved. He'd given me the tools to fight back, to choose my own path. My phone rang, not Sean this time, but an unknown number with a Cedar Falls area code. Hello. Mrs. Thornfield. This is Terry Wells from Sunset Manor. I'm calling about your son. I sat up straighter. What about him? He's been calling us repeatedly, asking about financial assistance programs for residents. He seems to think that you might need our services in the future. I almost laughed. I see. I wanted to let you know that we don't discuss residents or potential residents with family members without written consent, but he's been quite persistent. Thank you for telling me, Terry. I appreciate your discretion. Mrs. Thornfield, I hope you don't mind me saying this, but I follow your blog. What you're doing, it's inspiring. You're showing people that life doesn't end at 60. Thank you. That means a lot. Your son mentioned that you're overseas now. Is it everything you hoped it would be? I looked out at the African night sky, listened to the sounds of the village settling into sleep, felt the satisfaction of a day spent building something meaningful. It's more than I hoped, I said. It's everything I didn't know I needed. After I hung up, I thought about Terry's call. Sean was still trying to control the narrative, still trying to create a crisis that would justify his intervention. The thought of him calling assisted living facilities, painting me as a confused old woman who needed rescue, would have horrified me 6 months ago. Now it just seemed pathetic. I opened my laptop and began typing a new email. Dear Sean and Megan. Congratulations on your pregnancy. I'm sure you'll be wonderful parents. I received your messages about needing help. I understand that babies are expensive and that you're concerned about the future. But I need you to understand something. I am not your financial backup plan. I am a 63-year-old woman living exactly the life I choose to live. I am healthy, happy, and productive. I am using my resources to help people who need help, to make a difference in places where difference is desperately needed. I am not lost. I am not confused. I am not in need of rescue. I am free. If you want a relationship with me, it will be on terms of mutual respect and understanding. You will not attempt to manage my life, control my finances, or make decisions for me. You will not call assisted living facilities on my behalf. You will not spread stories about my mental capacity or my ability to take care of myself. If you can accept these terms, you are welcome to contact me. If you cannot, then I wish you well and hope you find the strength to solve your own problems without depending on others. I love you both, but I love myself more. Jacqueline. P.S. I'm changing my will. The house will be donated to Habitat for Humanity upon my death. My liquid assets will be divided between Doctors Without Borders, the Peace Corps, and a scholarship fund for late-life career changers. I wanted you to know so you can plan accordingly. I sent the email and closed my laptop. The lie about the will was strategic. Let them think their inheritance was gone. Let them face the reality of supporting themselves without my money as a safety net. In truth, I hadn't decided what to do with my estate, but I had decided one thing: whatever I left behind would go to people who saw value in what I was trying to do, not to people who saw me as a problem to be solved. The dramatic end, 1 year later. The next morning, I packed my bags for Kenya. 6 months in Ghana had taught me that I was capable of more than I'd ever imagined. I could adapt to new cultures, learn new languages, solve problems I'd never encountered before. I could be useful, valuable, important, not because of what I owned, but because of what I could contribute. As the plane lifted off from Accra, I thought about the woman I'd been 6 months ago, grieving, uncertain, vulnerable to other people's manipulation. That woman was gone, replaced by someone I barely recognized but deeply admired. At the airport in Nairobi, I checked my phone for the first time in 24 hours. There were 17 missed calls from Sean, 6 from Megan, and 1 email from Roger Morrison. Jacqueline. I've been contacted by Sean regarding your mental capacity and your ability to manage your affairs. I want you to know that I refuse to discuss your situation with him and that I consider you to be of sound mind and fully capable of making your own decisions. However, I thought you should know that he's considering legal action to establish a conservatorship. Please call me when you have a chance. Best regards. Roger. I stared at the email, feeling something I hadn't felt in months: anger. Not the hot, impulsive anger of the moment, but the cold, strategic anger of someone who'd been pushed too far. Sean wanted to declare me incompetent. He wanted to take control of my life through legal manipulation. But as I sat in that Kenyan airport, I realized something that changed everything. I wasn't the same woman who had sat in her kitchen 6 months ago, discovering her husband's secrets. I wasn't the grieving widow who could be manipulated and controlled. I was Jacqueline Thornfield, and I had become dangerous. The final confrontation, 2 years later. 2 years later, I stood in the arrivals hall of the Cedar Falls Regional Airport, my sun-weathered hands gripping the handle of a single suitcase. My silver hair was shorter now, more practical for the places I'd been. My clothes were simple, well-traveled. I looked like exactly what I was, a woman who had seen the world and been changed by it. The text message had been brief: Mom in hospital. Heart attack. Come home. Sean. Walter's lawyer, Roger Morrison, met me at baggage claim. At 57, he looked older, more tired. The years had not been kind to those who stayed behind. Jacqueline, he said, embracing me briefly. I'm sorry you had to come back under these circumstances. How is she? I asked, though we both knew I wasn't asking about Sean's mother-in-law. Cheryl is stable. But Jacqueline. Roger paused, choosing his words carefully. There's something you need to know before you see Sean. We sat in his car in the airport parking lot while he explained. The conservatorship petition had failed, spectacularly. My blog, my documented travels, my clear mental competency had made Sean look like exactly what he was, a greedy son trying to steal his mother's independence. But that wasn't the worst of it. Sean's business failed 2 years ago, Roger said quietly. He borrowed against his house, maxed out credit cards, took out personal loans. He and Megan are bankrupt. They lost their home 6 months ago. They're living with Megan's mother now, that's who had the heart attack. I absorbed this information without emotion. And the baby? Madison is 2 now. She's a beautiful little girl, Jacqueline. But Sean and Megan are drowning. The medical bills from Cheryl's care, their own debts, a toddler to support. They want my money. They need your money. But more than that. Roger turned to face me. I think Sean finally understands what he lost when he tried to control you. I think he realizes what family actually means. We drove through Cedar Falls in silence. The town looked smaller than I remembered, more tired. The economic troubles that had touched so many American communities had not spared this place. Mercy General Hospital sat on the outskirts of town, a low brick building that seemed to crouch against the Iowa sky. I found Sean in the cardiac care waiting room, slumped in a plastic chair that had seen better decades. At 43, my son looked older than his years. His hair was thinning, his expensive clothes replaced by discount store wear. But it was his eyes that stopped me. The calculating look was gone, replaced by something I hadn't seen since he was a child, genuine fear. Mom, he said, standing so quickly he nearly knocked over his coffee. You came. Of course I came. We stood there for a moment, 2 people who had once been family, trying to navigate the distance between us. How is Cheryl? I asked. Stable. The surgery went well, but she's going to need extended care. Rehabilitation, medications, home nursing. His voice trailed off. Where's Megan? With Madison. At the house. Cheryl's house, I mean. We're. He couldn't finish the sentence. Living there, I supplied. Yes, Roger told me about your circumstances. Sean's face flushed. I suppose you're enjoying this. The great success story brought low. Your ungrateful son getting exactly what he deserved. I studied his face, really looked at him for the first time in 2 years. The arrogance was gone. The sense of entitlement had been burned away by reality. What remained was a broken man who had lost everything, including his mother's love. No, Sean, I said quietly. I'm not enjoying this at all. Something in my tone made him look up, searching my face for judgment, for vindication, for anything that would help him understand what came next. I've seen real poverty now, I continued. I've worked with families who have nothing, no food, no shelter, no hope. I've held children who were dying from diseases that could be prevented with a $5 vaccination. I've built houses for people who had been living in the dirt. Sean waited, afraid to speak. Your situation is not poverty, Sean. It's consequences. But that doesn't mean I'm going to let my granddaughter suffer for your mistakes. Madison, he whispered. You'll help with Madison. I'm going to do more than that. I sat down in the chair beside him, feeling the weight of 2 years of anger and disappointment settling into something else, not forgiveness, exactly, but understanding. I'm going to offer you a choice. The same kind of choice you offered me 3 years ago. Sean's hands were shaking now. What kind of choice? I will pay for Cheryl's medical care. I will help you get back on your feet financially. I will set up a trust fund for Madison's education. I will make sure my granddaughter never wants for anything. The hope that bloomed in Sean's eyes was painful to watch. But, I continued, there are conditions. Anything. Mom, anything you want. First, you will never again attempt to control my life, my finances, or my decisions. Not through legal action, not through emotional manipulation, not through family pressure. Is that clear? Yes. Second, you will apologize, publicly, for the lies you spread about my mental capacity. You will retract every statement you made to medical professionals, legal authorities, and family members about my ability to take care of myself. Sean nodded rapidly. Of course. I was wrong. I was completely wrong. Third, I said, and my voice became harder, you will earn this help. You will not be handed money to waste on another failed business venture. You will get a job, any job, and prove that you can support your family through honest work. The trust fund will supplement your income, not replace it. I understand. And finally, I stood up, looking down at this man who had once been my little boy. You will let me have a relationship with my granddaughter. Not as a check-writing grandmother, not as an ATM with gray hair, but as a person who loves her and wants to be part of her life. Sean broke then. The tears came in great, heaving sobs that shook his entire body. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. I ruined everything. I destroyed our family. I was so stupid, so greedy, so... He couldn't continue. I reached out and touched his shoulder, the first physical contact we'd had in 2 years. You made mistakes, Sean. Terrible mistakes. But you're not the first person to lose their way, and you won't be the last. The question is, what are you going to do now? He looked up at me, his face streaked with tears and snot, looking more like a child than he had in decades. I want to be better, Mom. I want to be the son you raised. I want Madison to be proud of her father. Then you will be. I pulled out my phone and called Roger Morrison. Roger, it's Jacqueline. I need you to draw up some documents. Trust funds, medical care arrangements, a formal agreement. Yes, I'm sure. I'll be in your office tomorrow morning. As I hung up, Sean grabbed my hand. Why? He asked. After everything I did to you, why are you helping me? I thought about that question, really thought about it. Why was I helping the son who had tried to steal my freedom? Why was I rescuing the man who had attempted to have me declared incompetent? Because, I said finally, this isn't about you, Sean. This is about Madison. This is about Cheryl, who never did anything wrong except raise a son who made bad choices. This is about the kind of person I want to be. I paused, looking out the hospital window at the Iowa landscape I'd once thought I'd never see again. And maybe, I added, it's because I finally understand what your father was trying to tell me. Family isn't about blood, Sean. It's not about obligation or inheritance or control. Family is about choosing to love someone even when they've given you every reason not to. Sean squeezed my hand, and for a moment, we were just a mother and son in a hospital waiting room, holding onto each other in the wreckage of what we'd once been. I love you, Mom. I love you too, Sean. That was never the question. The question was whether I could trust you. Whether I could respect you. Whether I could be proud of you. And now. I smiled, the first genuine smile I'd given my son in 3 years. Now we're going to find out. The next morning, I sat in Roger Morrison's office, signing documents that would change my family's life forever. The trust funds were generous but not excessive. The medical care provisions were comprehensive. The employment requirements were strict. Are you sure about this, Jacqueline? Roger asked. After everything he put you through. I'm sure, I said, signing my name with the same steady hand that had built houses in Ghana, managed medical supplies in Kenya, and taught English to children in Vietnam. But I'm not the same woman who left here 2 years ago, Roger. I'm not going to be manipulated or controlled or taken advantage of ever again. And if Sean fails, if he can't meet your conditions, then he fails. And Madison will still be taken care of, but she'll be taken care of by people who deserve the privilege. That afternoon, I drove to Cheryl's house, a modest 2-story in one of Cedar Falls' older neighborhoods. The lawn needed cutting, the paint was peeling, and there was a children's bike in the driveway that had seen better days. Megan answered the door, and I saw immediately how the years had changed her. The polished perfection was gone, replaced by the practical exhaustion of a mother struggling to make ends meet. Her blonde highlights had grown out, her clothes were from Target instead of boutiques, and her hands, those manicured hands that had never seen real work, were rough and callous now. "Jacqueline," she said, and I could see her trying to calculate whether I was there as friend or enemy. "Megan, may I come in?" She stepped aside, and I entered a house that was clean but sparse. The furniture was a mixture of hand-me-downs and thrift store finds. There were no expensive decorative pieces, no designer touches. This was the home of people who had learned the difference between wants and needs. "Madison is napping," Megan said nervously. "But I could wake her if you want to. Let her sleep. We need to talk first." We sat in the small living room, 2 women who had once been on opposite sides of a war, trying to find common ground. "Sean told you about Jacqueline's offer?" I asked. "Some of it. The medical bills, the trust fund for Madison." Megan's voice was carefully neutral. "What he may not have explained are the conditions." I laid out the requirements clearly and without negotiation. Megan listened without interruption, her face cycling through relief, gratitude, and something that might have been shame. "I know you think I'm a terrible person," she said when I finished. "I know you blame me for encouraging Sean, for pushing him to try to control you. I don't think you're terrible, Megan. I think you're young and you made mistakes. The question is, what kind of person are you going to be going forward? I want to be better. I want to be the kind of mother Madison can look up to. I want to be the kind of wife Sean deserves, not the wife who helped him lose his way." "Then you will be." A small voice called from upstairs, "Mommy." Megan's face lit up. "That's Madison. She's been so confused by all the changes, all the stress. She keeps asking where Daddy goes during the day, why we don't live in our old house anymore. May I meet her?" Megan nodded and called upstairs. A few minutes later, I heard small feet on the stairs, and then she appeared, my granddaughter. Madison was beautiful in the way only 2-year-olds can be, with Sean's dark hair and Walter's brown eyes. She wore a sundress that was too big for her and carried a stuffed elephant that had clearly been loved to the point of baldness. She stopped at the bottom of the stairs, studying me with the serious expression children reserve for new adults. "Madison," Megan said gently, "this is Grandma Jacqueline. Daddy's mommy." Madison considered this information carefully, then walked over to where I sat on the couch. "You're Daddy's mommy?" she asked. "I am." "Where were you?" The question was innocent, but it hit me like a physical blow. Where had I been while my granddaughter was learning to walk, to talk, to be human? I had been saving the world, building houses, teaching children, making a difference in the lives of strangers. I had been everywhere except here. I was far away, I said honestly. But I'm here now. Madison climbed up onto the couch beside me, settling herself with the confidence of a child who had never met a stranger she couldn't charm. "I like your elephant," I said, pointing to her stuffed animal. "Her name is Kasai. Daddy says it means born during difficult times." I looked at Megan in surprise. "Sean speaks Swahili." He's been learning, Megan said quietly. He thought maybe if he understood some of the places you'd been, some of the work you'd done, maybe he could understand you better. Madison held up her elephant for my inspection. Want to hold Casey? I took the worn stuffed animal, feeling the weight of unconditional trust that only children can give. She's very special, I said. Daddy says you help people far away. Do you help elephants too? And in that moment, sitting in a shabby living room with my granddaughter and her stuffed elephant, I understood what I had really lost in my quest for independence. I had gained the world, but I had missed the first 2 years of Madison's life. I had fought for my freedom to live as I chose, but I had chosen to live without family. The victory suddenly felt hollow. I help people, I said carefully. But I think maybe it's time I learned to help the people closest to me too. Madison smiled and leaned against me, small and warm and trusting. Good, she said. Daddy needs lots of help. That evening, I sat on Cheryl's back porch with Sean and Megan, watching Madison play in the small yard. The sun was setting over Iowa, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that rivaled anything I'd seen in my travels. I've been thinking about what you said, Sean told me. About earning your help instead of just taking it. Oh. I applied for a job today. At Henderson Construction. They're the company that bought out Dad's old business. It's just entry-level, manual labor mostly, but it's honest work. I nodded approvingly. Walter would be proud. I doubt that. I think Dad would be ashamed of what I became. Your father loved you, Sean. He was disappointed in some of your choices, but he never stopped loving you. How do you know? I pulled out a letter I'd been carrying for 2 years, another document from Walter's desk, one I'd never shown Sean. He wrote this for you, I said, handing him the envelope. I was supposed to give it to you if you ever found your way back to being the man he raised. Sean opened the letter with shaking hands. I couldn't see what Walter had written, but I could see its effect on my son. His face crumpled, and he pressed the letter to his chest. He forgave me, Sean whispered. Even knowing what I would do, he forgave me. That's what parents do, I said simply. We love our children even when they break our hearts. Madison ran over to us, grass stains on her dress and dirt under her fingernails. Grandma Jackie, she said, climbing into my lap with the ease of someone who had already decided I belonged in her life, will you tell me a story? What kind of story? About elephants. Real ones. I looked at Sean and Megan, these 2 people who had nearly destroyed my life and were now my responsibility again. I looked at Madison, this beautiful child who carried Walter's eyes and Sean's stubbornness and possibilities I couldn't even imagine. Once upon a time, I began, there was a grandmother who thought she knew what freedom meant. She thought freedom meant being alone, being independent, being able to do whatever she wanted without anyone else's opinions or problems. Was she happy? Madison asked. She thought she was. She traveled to faraway places and helped people and did important work. But then she met a little girl with a stuffed elephant, and she realized that the most important work of all was right here at home. What happened then? I smiled, feeling the weight of my choices, the good ones and the bad ones, the necessary ones and the ones I wished I could undo. Then she learned that real freedom isn't about running away from the people who love you. Real freedom is about choosing who to love and how to love them, even when it's complicated, even when it's hard, even when they've disappointed you. Did she live happily ever after? I looked at Sean, who was still clutching his father's letter. I looked at Megan, who was watching her daughter with fierce protective love. I looked at this house that wasn't mine, in a town I tried to leave behind, surrounded by a family that had betrayed me and needed me in equal measure. She lived, I said finally. And that turned out to be enough. As the Iowa sun set behind us, I realized that my greatest adventure wasn't behind me in the villages of Ghana or the clinics of Kenya. It was here, in this moment, choosing to rebuild what had been broken instead of walking away from it. The war was over. We had all lost something. But maybe, if we were very careful and very brave, we could still win the peace. And sometimes, that has to be enough. Epilogue, 5 years later. 5 years later, I stood in the backyard of my house, the house Walter and I had built together, the house I had almost lost, the house that was now filled with the sound of a 7-year-old's laughter. Madison was taller now, all legs and elbows and endless questions. She still carried Casey everywhere, though the elephant was now held together more by determination than by fabric. She spoke 3 languages, English, Spanish, which she was learning in school, and enough Swahili to impress her teachers during Culture Day. Sean worked for Henderson Construction now, not as the boss, not as the owner, but as a reliable employee who showed up every day and did honest work with his hands. The job had changed him, had given him back some of the dignity he'd thought he'd lost forever. He was building a house, a real house, not a financial castle built on credit and speculation, one paycheck at a time. Megan had gone back to school to become a nurse. It was hard work, studying while raising a daughter and caring for her mother, but she had discovered something she'd never known about herself: she was good at taking care of people. Really good at it. Cheryl had recovered from her heart attack but would never be completely independent again. She lived with Sean and Megan in their small rental house, and the 3 generations of women, grandmother, mother, and daughter, had formed an alliance that was both practical and loving. As for me, I had learned to live with complexity. I still traveled, but now Madison sometimes came with me on the safer trips, her wide eyes taking in the world beyond Iowa. I still volunteered, but now I also served on the school board, helped with church fundraisers, and showed up for every soccer game and school play. I had learned that freedom wasn't about choosing between family and independence. Real freedom was about choosing how to balance them, how to love people without losing yourself, how to be needed without being controlled. The trust funds had worked exactly as intended. Madison's education was secure. Cheryl's medical care was covered. Sean and Megan's basic needs were met, but they had to work for anything beyond the basics. It was a safety net, not a hammock. And slowly, carefully, we had rebuilt something that looked like a family. Grandma Jackie. Madison called from the garden where she was helping me plant Walter's tomatoes. Tell me again about the elephants in Kenya. Which story? I asked, though I knew which one she meant. The one about the mama elephant who saved the baby elephant from the poachers. I settled beside her in the dirt, my hands as comfortable with Iowa soil as they had been with African red earth. Well, I began. It was early morning, and the mist was still rising from the river. As I told the story, one of dozens Madison had memorized but never tired of hearing, I caught sight of Sean through the kitchen window. He was helping Megan study for her nursing exam, holding flashcards and making encouraging noises when she got the answers right. They weren't the same people who had tried to control my life 5 years ago. Neither was I. We had all learned hard lessons about love and money, about family and independence, about the difference between caring for someone and controlling them. The phone rang inside the house, my satellite phone, the one I used to coordinate international volunteer projects. I was scheduled to leave for Guatemala next month, to help build a school in a mountain village. This time, Sean and Megan had asked if they could come too, not permanently, not as a way to escape their responsibilities, but as a family vacation with a purpose. Madison had already started learning Spanish in preparation. Grandma Jackie, Madison said, interrupting my thoughts, when I grow up, I want to help people like you do. That's wonderful, sweetheart. What kind of people do you want to help? She considered this seriously, her small face scrunched in concentration. All of them, she said finally. The elephants and the people and the grandmas whose sons try to put them in old people homes. I laughed, pulling her close. That's a very comprehensive plan. Will you teach me? I'll teach you everything I know. And I would. Not just about international development or cross-cultural communication or project management, but about the harder lessons, about standing up for yourself, about choosing your battles, about the difference between love and control. I would teach her that family is not a trap but a choice, renewed every day. That independence is not about being alone but about being free to love without losing yourself. That wealth is not about what you can buy but about what you can give. Most importantly, I would teach her that it's never too late to start over, to change course, to become the person you were meant to be. The sun was setting now, painting the Iowa sky in those familiar shades of gold and pink. In a few hours, Sean would come home from work, tired but satisfied. Megan would quiz herself on medical terminology while helping Madison with her homework. Cheryl would tell stories about the old days, while Madison listened with the patience that only grandchildren possess. It wasn't the life I had planned when I stood in that funeral parlor 5 years ago, grieving and angry and determined to escape. It wasn't the adventure I had dreamed of when I first discovered Walter's secrets. But it was my life. Complicated, messy, full of people who drove me crazy and loved me fiercely. Full of second chances and hard-won wisdom and the kind of joy that comes from choosing to rebuild rather than walk away. Walter's garden was thriving around us, the tomatoes he had planted with his own hands now tended by his wife and granddaughter. The house he had built still stood solid and welcoming, no longer a prison but a home base for whatever adventures lay ahead. And somewhere in Kenya, a village had clean water because an American widow had chosen to use her inheritance for something larger than herself. Somewhere in Ghana, children were learning to read in a school built with Iowa money and Iowa hands. Somewhere in Guatemala, families were waiting for the arrival of 3 generations of Americans who were finally learning what it meant to be a family. The war was over. We had all been wounded. But we had survived, and in surviving, we had discovered something more valuable than money or independence or control. We had discovered that love, real love, is not about possession. It's about possibility. And possibility, I had learned, is the greatest inheritance of all. Come on, Madison, I said, standing and brushing the dirt from my knees. Let's go inside and help your parents with dinner. Can we have pancakes? It's dinner time. Breakfast for dinner. I looked at this beautiful child, this gift I had almost missed, this second chance I had almost thrown away. Why not? I said. Life's too short for conventional meals. As we walked toward the house, Madison's small hand in mine, I could hear Walter's voice in the evening breeze, carried on the scent of tomato plants and the promise of rain. Well done, Corin, he seemed to say. Well done. Behind us, the garden settled into evening quiet. Ahead of us, the house glowed with warm light and the sound of voices that belonged to me and I to them. I was 68 years old. I had buried a husband, fought a war, traveled the world, lost a family, and found it again. I was exactly where I was supposed to be. And for the first time in 5 years, that was enough. The end.